Peace and blessings and justice be upon you. What a beautiful audience. Praise God. What a beautiful audience. What a special occasion. We're very honored to be with all of you here, to see us assembled here on this very special occasion, commemorating the landmark decision reached 70 years ago by the United States Supreme Court in their ruling, Brown versus Board of Education. And we know that that ruling changed the trajectory of public education across the country, including here in Tampa and in Hillsborough County. We know that in many ways it was a controversial decision. We know that there's some people who applauded it, who welcomed it. We know that there's some people who questioned it. And we know, in fact, that some people who resisted it. And their resistance, in fact, in many instances, took the form of intentional resistance. For example, many of you are familiar with the expression, with all deliberate speed. And we know that there are boards of education and school boards, for example, that said, I don't care what the United States Supreme Court says, I'm not going to do it. So, for example, in 1954, the ruling was issued. I graduated high school in 1964. Guess what? Schools were still fully desegregated 10 years later. In 1971, while I was here, I testified in federal court before Judge Ben Princeman because Hillsborough County school system was still segregated almost 2 years later. And so it was Judge Princeman's order that said, Raymond Shelton and school board, stop dragging your feet, let's get this done. You're going to hear this evening, we're very privileged to have such a distinguished group of people here on the panel who will share with you their perspectives, their understandings, etc. regarding this decision, the impact that it had both nationally and locally, including the impact that it had on them personally. Before we do that, I've been asked to acknowledge some very special guests who are in the audience. And of course, all of you are special. And when people ask you to start recognizing and acknowledging people and calling names, you know you're in trouble. Because you know you're always either going to mispronounce somebody's name, which is bad enough, but you're going to omit some names that ought to be called. Ought to be called. So I'm going to apologize and then I'll go ahead and move forward with this. So please forgive me either if I mispronounce your name or if I omit your name, or if those of you who lived through this experience as you're witnessing this with us this evening, there are names that will arise in your own mind. People who made real contributions, who participated, in some cases people who suffered, like some of the children, students who were suspended, for example, but they were part and parcel of the process. I'm going to call some names very quickly. I'm going to ask that as I call your name, if you're with us, please stand. And we're going to ask that everyone hold your applause to the very end. So please stand as we go through this very quickly. Thank you. Joan Dawson, here, wife Warren Dawson, attorney Warren Dawson. Is Joan Dawson? Great, excellent. Doretha Edgecombe, former school board member and wife of late Judge George Edgecombe. Please stand. School board, Shake Washington. And Shake was not his name. That was his nickname. They called him Shake. What was it? Henry Washington. Right. That's it. Okay, very good. Wife, right? Good. Great, very good. And Marcia Mejia and Dwayne Mallory, here representing Congresswoman Kathy Castor. Right, there they are. Very good. Shirley Lowry, wife of the late esteemed Reverend Dr. Elian Lowry. Okay. Janelle and Jaria Wiles, granddaughter of Jenny D. Wiles Sr. And many of them, again, are dear Harvey, granddaughter of Jerry Harvey and niece of Mary Harvey Sr. Some of you may have worked on the docks back in the day. Vivian Kitchen, instructor and training teacher during integration. Very good, thank you. Kay Wells, granddaughter of C. Blythe Andrews Sr. Present. Okay. And we want to honor the late Sam Horton and the late, I think it was E.L. Bing, if I remember correctly, were very active here in Hillsborough County in the process of both educating children and then in the desegregation of the school system. Harold Clark, principal. Harold, good. And then we're very privileged to have Judge Peggy Quinn. Judge Quinn? Quince, right, got it. Excuse me, please forgive me. And then just two names that I must call, then we're going to give everyone a round of applause. Some of you will remember Otis Anthony. Otis was senior class president at Blake High School when the school was desegregating. Some of you will remember him. And some of you, I'm sure, will remember the late Rudolph Harris. And Rudolph Harris was an educator and a columnist for the Florida Sentinel Bulletin and a real activist throughout that period. Now, please join me in giving a hearty and warm welcome. Thank you so much. Now, I have the distinct honor and privilege of introducing or presenting to you, presenting to others, our moderator for the evening. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to read her impressive bio. If you have a copy of the program, you'll find it printed on the back of the program. I'm speaking of attorney Tammy Bryant Spratling, and she will be our moderator for the evening. Please join with me in welcoming her to the mic. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Do you smell that? I think it smells a lot like change in this room. There is an incredible energy. These incredible people that we have in this room that have been honored with your applause. Let's give them another applause right now. Because with their applause, we're not only applauding them for being here this evening, but we are applauding them for the legacy that they have created of change in our community. And we are so grateful for the things that they did to move our community forward. And we know that that is a charge to all of us that we need to continue to push forward tonight and every single night that we have on this earth in the future. My name is Tammy Bryant Spratling, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Community Tampa Bay. We are an anti-discrimination, educationally focused nonprofit. What we do is we create spaces for people who are different than each other to have conversations across those differences in the pursuit of breaking down prejudice, bias, and stereotypes. It's my honor this evening to serve as your moderator, and I have unquestionably the hardest job in this room this evening, because what we have as panelists is 4 keynote speakers, right? We could be here for probably 4 to 6 hours and not hear half of what they have to say. So, as a very, very consciously minded moderator, I'm going to say little tonight, and I'm going to make sure that their stories are the ones that really shine through this evening. Before we do that, we have a couple of things to do. So first is we have an incredible list of sponsors for this evening. I'm going to take the imam's lead here and ask that you hold your applause until the end, because we have 11 incredible sponsors this evening. So, Beulah Baptist Institutional Church, thank you so much for hosting. Community Tampa Bay, the Corporation to Develop Communities of Tampa Incorporated, Florida Humanities, Florida Press Educational Services, Saturday Morning Breakfast Group, Tampa Bay History Center, Tampa Bay Times Newspapers and Education, Tampa Housing Authority, Tampa Organization of Black Affairs, and the University of South South Florida Racial Justice Institute. Please give them a round of applause. And we have another dignitary coming to the stage right now. Look at this is Ray Arsenault, incredible, distinguished panelist who joined us in St. Pete as well. Hi, Ray. Great to see you tonight. Incredible. Thank you for joining us. All right. So with that, I want to just give just 2 minutes of an overview of this project. So this project has been a partnership with the Tampa Bay Times, Newspapers in Education, and Community Tampa Bay. What I'm so excited to share with you is that newspaper leaflet that you see at your tables has been disseminated across the state of Florida to high schools and high school teachers. This is a teaching text that teachers can utilize in their classrooms for high school students to be able to tell these stories. Now, we did one for the 50th anniversary, but this new version actually incorporates a lot of testimonials, a lot of oral history. So we've been able to preserve this oral history with this document, and again, we have the opportunity for teachers to teach this across the state of Florida. This is, of course, incredibly important right now, and we're so grateful that we have this as a resource. This is a primary document that can be utilized in our classrooms. The program also included the ability for us to teach teachers how to use this document. So we had a webinar where teachers from across the state of Florida were able to learn how to use the document in their classrooms. We've also hosted a similar program with local panelists in the cities of Jacksonville, Tallahassee, Miami, and St. Petersburg. So here we are now with our 5th version of this event here in the city of Tampa, because we had Miss Chloe and we had Mr. Fred and Ray Arsenault joined us in St. Petersburg, and they said, you know what, we need to do this again in Tampa. So thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your vision for seeing this happen. And look at this incredible room of 250 some RSVPs this evening. So thank you so much to all of you for being here. Yes. Now, one final thing before we get into the actual panel discussion is that we do have a special recognition that we want to provide to someone who unfortunately, well, I'll leave it there. I'll let Miss Chloe tell. Yeah.
Good afternoon. You look beautiful out there. I'm going to call on my good friend here, Dr. Jill Smith. Shannon Smith, and she is the founder of USF Black Life Institute. And we want to make a presentation to someone really, really special in our community. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Smith.
Thank you so much, Chloe. What an exciting evening. Would you please just join me in giving Chloe a round of applause? She's done it. So for me, it is a very, very special opportunity, and I've been given 2 seconds, but I'm not sure about 2 seconds. Bringing us together for the 70th anniversary of Reverend Oliver Leon Brown. Brown versus the Board of Education. Brown versus the Board of Education for this 70th anniversary. And it is indeed a very, very special honor for me to be participating just for a second. And there is a special individual that has worked very, very, very hard, though we all work hard. She has done so much in the area of education, and she's done so much in the area of the community. Outstanding, brilliant, 4th generation native Tampa, 4th generation. She received a BA degree at Cornell University in New York, a master's degree and a PhD in sociology at Duke in North Carolina. She's the author of a couple of books. Actually, I brought one here with me to show you the work has been done in Brazil. She's interviewed families, she's worked with families in Brazil and has continued to do that. Brazil, many of you may or may not be aware, but the language is Portuguese. And this professional worked in Brazil with Portuguese. Here at the university, very briefly, she's held various different roles. Many of you are aware of that. Senior advisor to the president and the provost, you know, president law. She's been interim vice president and vice provost for faculty for recruitment and retention. She has done so much on that campus, and those of us who have worked at the University of South Florida realizes it. And so with her tenure, she's played major roles. She's recognized by colleges and universities throughout the country. When the Hillsborough County School Board voted, as many of you know, to close JUST, our commissioner was there along with so many others, but she was there. They voted 4-3, she was there. We, Beulah Baptist Institutional Church, under the leadership of our lead pastor, adopted JUST Elementary School, and we will continue to support that particular school along with others. I can see Chloe getting restless up here a few minutes, but let me tell you why Chloe and her committee decided we do so much for so many people. And many times we are not aware of the work that's being done at our universities. This young, brilliant woman has been on board. Tampa is her home. She was right there. She was giving presentations about social justice. Well, I tell you, one of my friends who's a former dean's wife, she heard this young woman, and she didn't just hear, she put $1 million down to start the Social Justice Institute. Give it to her. That's what we have. And she is now the founding and first director of the Social Justice Institute at the University of South Florida. Dr. Elizabeth, would you please come forward, Freeman? He will be traveling with her. We are losing them. Rice University, can you believe it? The private school in Houston is taking them away. I mean, we are just really sad. Dr. Elizabeth, we are proud of you. We wanted to recognize you. I understand your parents are here as well. Thank you for the
the opportunity to work with Dr. George Freeman a couple years ago on the Racial Justice Initiative, and I know that this is a loss for our community here. However, I also know that she's going to continue to tell our story, and she's going to continue the work over in her new position, so we're so grateful for her. Okay, we're about to get started with a panel discussion. How's that sound? All right, so again, there's going to be it's going to be a little bit more like mini TED Talks as opposed to a panel discussion, because we have some incredible stories that we need to make sure are told this evening. And so We're also going to kind of preserve some time by not getting into bios. The bios are infinitely long, and there's not enough time for us to tell you everything you need to know about each of these panelists. However, we have included bios in your printed materials, and I do encourage you to review those printed materials. In fact, you will also find some longer stories in the interviews in the publication as well. And then finally, if you go on the Newspapers in Time, or Newspapers in Education, Tampa Bay Times website, you will also find more interviews on there that have been preserved. So there's a lot of incredible resources that I'd love to point you to. With that, I am going to introduce our first panelist who's going to speak this evening, and that is going to be Ms. Brenda, or Dr. Brenda Walker. Dr. Brenda Walker is going to have a bit of a PowerPoint and get us started with kind of a foundation of how we get to the Brown versus Board of Education decision. Dr. Walker.
IT, am I queued up? I can't see the. Good evening. Good evening. So my name is Brenda L. Walker. I'm a professor at the University of South Florida, where I have been for the past 32 years. And I'm also an attorney. So one of the first orders of business for me today is to set the stage on why I am so invested in the Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka case. Did it advance? Okay, great. Setting the stage, okay. So first of all, let me just tell you this. The Brown v. Board of Education is everything. It undergirds all of my work at the University of South Florida for the past 32 years. I have tracked the case, and let me just tell you this to my dear legal colleagues, to the lawyers in the House. I had no intention of going to law school at the age of 51, but it is because of the Brown v. Board of Education case that I did. You know, I thought when I got my PhD that I would be able to use it effectively to improve outcomes for African American children and youth. I went back to school, I went to law school in 2004, which happened to be the 50th anniversary of the Brown case, so that I could add another layer of advocacy and agency. And what else you need to know about me is that through special invitation on May 17, 2024, guess where my husband Andre Walker and I were? We were at Howard University celebrating the 70th anniversary of the Brown case. And the next day, on the 18th, we were at the Smithsonian African American History Museum of History and Culture celebrating. I had the luxury, the privilege, and the pleasure of hearing directly from Cheryl Henderson Brown of the Brown case, from several of the Little Rock 9 members, and from some of the plaintiffs that were in the earlier Brown cases. So I want to start by saying that it all started with Plessy v. Ferguson, May 18, 1896, that Supreme Court decision. And so I'm gonna be really brief, and I'm gonna go fairly quickly, but Homer Plessy was 7/8 white, 1/8 black, and he deliberately engaged in an act of civil disobedience. He deliberately sat in the whites only section and challenged the Separate Car Act of 1890 in Louisiana. And that's where that whole doctrine and after going to law school, what some call legal fiction of separate but equal came about. And now I want to tell, we know a lot about Brown. We often don't hear a lot about the cases that preceded Brown and that were a part of the consolidated of the consolidated cases of Brown. So let me start with Briggs v. Elliott. Is that on the screen, Briggs v. Elliott? Okay, good, wonderful. And that was in 1949, and so look at the states that were involved, South Carolina. And this one was simply the plaintiffs were denied bus transportation for black students. There were white buses, but there were no buses for black students who had to walk many miles to get to school. And so sort of the legal issues were, should buses be provided for black children? That was the first part of the case, and the order was no, the decision was no. The second part of the case was, should school segregation, desegregation be abolished? Should school segregation be abolished? The answer, the legal answer, decision was no. And what the courts did was they ordered that school facilities to be equalized due to 14th Amendment violations. The next case, 1951, Bowling v. Sharp, Washington, D.C. And the facts were that 11 black students deliberately tried to be enrolled at the white schools. They were denied. The question was, should black students be permitted to enroll in white schools? The decision was no, that they could not, based solely on their race. The next case, Davis v. Prince Edward County, 1951, Virginia. This, ladies and gentlemen, was the only case that originated, that was a student-led protest, which was incredible. Barbara, look up, in your leisure, look up Barbara Rose Johns. That was the student. And the question was, should school segregation be abolished? And the answer was no. The decision was no, but they ordered school facilities to be equalized. The fourth case, Belton v. Gephardt, 1951, Delaware. The facts, black students attempted deliberately, and I'll come back to that, deliberately attempted to enroll in white schools. The legal issue was the 14th Amendment violated due to unequal facilities and buses? And the decision was yes. So this was the case that was won at the lower court. However, it was appealed, which brings us to Brown and all of the consolidated cases. Oliver Brown was the lead plaintiff. Now, many people think that Oliver Brown was chosen to be the lead plaintiff because alphabetically of all the plaintiffs, his name came first. It did not. He was deliberately chosen because he was a man and he was head of the household. And the legal issue was, is school segregation unconstitutional? The answer, the Supreme Court decision unanimously overturned that Plessy v. Ferguson separate but equal doctrine and ordered school desegregation. So now I'd like to briefly talk about what's real striking for me about the Brown case and all of the consolidated cases that made up Brown was how the NAACP and the legal team, Charles Hamilton Houston, and we know Thurgood Marshall, how they strategized. And this is what's really striking for me, the strategies. They carefully selected their plaintiffs, just like they selected Oliver Brown. They wanted plaintiffs that were beyond reproach. And here's the other thing, you can't file a law case on speculation. So you can't say, I think if I had tried to enroll in white schools that I would be denied. So they had each of those plaintiffs to deliberately attempt to enroll in white schools and then be denied. And then also, they learned from previous cases. One of the things that I shared with you from some of the other cases, the previous cases, was it was about where the courts would say, okay, we can still have separate but equal, but perhaps we just need to equalize the facilities or equalize the busing. So what Thurgood Marshall and his team decided was that was not enough for Brown to just equalize facilities. They provided testimony on the great sociologists, Mamie and Kenneth Clark, their Dow studies. And I don't know, IT, if you could click on the link. Now I wanted you to just hear, this was a recreation of the early Dow studies.
you like best or that you like to play with? That one? And can you show me the doll that is the nice doll? And why is that the nice doll? She's white. And can you show me the doll that looks bad? Okay. And can you give, and why does that look bad? Because it's black. And why do you think that's a nice doll? Because she's white. And can you give me the doll that looks like you? 15 out of the 21 children preferred the white doll.
So what those studies, and I believe that that's what was most persuasive and convincing for the Supreme Court. When they heard that testimony, and what they said was there was like a badge of inferiority that segregation places on black children. So last but certainly not least, so here's some of my musings and reflections over Brown and what I'm seeing. So I prepare teachers and principals. So this is what I'm seeing as I'm in and out of schools. So one of the reflections that I have is just about the massive resistance. You already heard about how the decision was in 1954, and I understand here in Tampa, desegregation didn't happen until 1971. And I also have the privilege of listening to my husband, who was a senior. So he had to spend his senior year away from Middleton at Lato High School. So when I listened to him and his classmates talk, and you could still even hear their voices shaking, how traumatic that was for them, but the massive, massive resistance. And I also think a lot about, the whole reason that Brown came about was to overturn separate but equal. So today we have desegregated schools. I often wonder, do our children still get an equal education? Perhaps we're together, but unequal. And then I also think a lot about black children's identity and self-esteem, as you heard from the Dow study. And I will be calling on some of you in this room because I have vowed that this year, 2024, I'm going to recreate the study. But I'm not just going to do it with elementary age children, I'm also going to do it with middle school students as well. Black principal and teachers, so when I was at Howard, we got to hear from Leslie Fenwick, who wrote a book called Jim Crow's Pink Slips. And that book, the thesis of that book is all of the black teachers and principals that were displaced as a result of school desegregation, many of whom were more qualified than the white teachers that took over their teaching and principal positions. And last but certainly not least, Brown was certainly a forerunner of desegregating not just schools, but other segments of our society, lunch counters and so forth, and also students with disabilities. So Brown was also a forerunner of civil rights cases. But I think it begs the question still, before I take my seat, I think we all have to ask ourselves the question, has Brown fulfilled its promises for African American children and youth? Or is it what some will say was a failed social experiment? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Mr. Fred Kearns, curator of Black History at the Tampa History Center, proud Middleton High School graduate. I really appreciate it if you'd start off telling us a little bit about your journey through our public schools. And I think off because I know you have a lot of feelings about the impact on Black teachers and the impact on Black students losing the opportunity to be taught by Black teachers through desegregation. Would you tell us your story? I can give you that microphone. You get to sit down.
Thank you, Tammy. I think I'll stand. Good evening, everyone. I want to begin by paying tribute to one of my role models for the last 50 years or so, Attorney Dylan Stewart. His lovely wife, Attorney Carolyn Stewart, and also just want to, yes, so, as the skill said, you get in trouble when you start calling names, but I had to pay tribute to Dale Stewart. Now, I'll just be brief, but I have to give you some of my story here, growing up in Tampa, in all segregated schools. The first white classmate I had was my junior year in college at USF. And that happened to be Ernest Creel, who was one of my classmates at Middleton High School. So Chloe's going to tell you her experience was sort of the exact opposite of mine, and she'll tell you what we mean by that when I left Middleton High School. But going back and reading some of the research and what happened, I was here in most of 1971, but when the schools actually desegregated in September, I left Tampa, went to Southern University in Baton Rouge. I worked there 4 years, and when I came back, we were still going through the adjustment, if you want to call it that. Attorney Dawson, back in 1976, along with several other people here in Tampa, testified before the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights about the process of desegregation, because the federal government wanted to know, well, 5 years after you have desegregated the public schools in Hillsborough County, how are things going? That was basically what they wanted to know. And I love him for the fact that he gave credit and recognition to Attorney Francisco Rodriguez, who filed the first case back in 1958, the Manning case here in Hillsborough County. I actually knew Andrew Manning, and you know, for many years I always thought that he was the first one, or his case was the first one to go to the courts. While that's been true, back in 1955, we actually had the first student, black student, to desegregate public school in Hillsborough County, but it happened at MacDill Air Force Base. Federal government, okay, so that's probably why that happened. And then one of the reasons that when Chloe and I first talked about doing this program tonight, and this is really Chloe's baby. Chloe said, we had so much fun, we did so many good things in St. Petersburg, we got up to Tampa, and I said, oh, Beulah Baptist Institutional Church. Thank you, Pastor. I said, we gotta go to Beulah. Reverend A. Leon Lowry. And the difference that he made. His son Benjamin, who was a special needs child, one of the first black children from Hillsborough County to go to a public school, along with one of my other mentors, the late Robert W. Saunders, and his son Bobby, who also desegregated Hillsborough County schools in 1962. So there were many examples, but it was 1971 when the masses of black children first attended black schools. And the late Al Davis was one of those people who testified before the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. And the question was put to him, how do you think things are going? And Al said, this is not fair. Black children are bused 10 years out of the 12 years they're in public schools, and white students are only bused 2 years out of those 12 years. How can that be fair? People were skirting all around that. Well, the response came back, well, you know, there's so many more white students. They make up 80% of the student population in Hillsborough County. If we bust all of them, the cost would be enormous and we wouldn't be able to afford it. So it's economically more feasible to bus the smaller number of black students for 10 years. I mean, you know, just crazy. So what we had in 1971, and Iskia Muhammad Akia was at the center of it, as oath of favors, if I may say that, Imam. The violence that we had, the resistance that we had at Plant High School, at Hillsborough High School, and I'm sure many other schools, where black students were thrown into a world that we really had very little knowledge of. And not only that, I think someone mentioned the plight of the teachers, the black teachers, the black administrators, the black coaches. My high school principal at Middleton High School was Andrew J. Farrell, Jr. In 1971, Mr. Farrell made the decision, rather than go to a high school and be an assistant principal or dean or whatever they were going to make him, he retired. I'm sure before he really had planned to retire. But this is something I love about my principal, and I didn't realize this until much, much later in life. If you go to the Robert W. Saunders Public Library on Nebraska, in the foyer there is a photograph of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. The only picture I've seen of Dr. King when he visited Tampa in 1961. And he's sitting on the stage at the Armory, Fort Homer Armory, where there was some 4,000 people who turned out on a Sunday evening to hear him talk. And there is A.J. Farrell Jr., my principal, sitting next to Dr. King. I didn't even know that he was involved in the civil rights movement. It was kind of kept on the down low. You know, teachers were fired and harassed left and right all over Florida. Sitting on the other side of Dr. King was Reverend Lowry. And so the last thing that I'll say is that at the Tampa Bay History Center, for the last 3 years, I've done everything I could to help give people the opportunity to tell these stories, to celebrate our heroes, our heroines, to make sure that our children know that we come from tremendous stock. We come from a very strong people who have survived what we have survived and still be here today. You know, there was a time when I was a boy when I heard somebody say, you know, Frederick, that's what they called me then. Frederick, you can be anything you want to be. You can even be the president of the United States. And they might as well have said you can be Superman. But now we've had the president of the United States who was black. We elected him twice. So you really can achieve, and look at from whence we came on those slave ships. I hate to think about it. So what we're trying to do this evening is just to bring together these scholars and these people who have stories to tell. As I take my seat, I want you to know how I really love the fact that George Schroeder Middleton is the man for whom my high school was named. Tigers in here, just raise your hand. I know we have some. I know we have some Middleton High School Tigers in here. George Schroeder Middleton worked with, knew Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. He was Secretary of Central Industrial Insurance Company when she was president. He knew Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois was on the committee that brought Dr. Du Bois to Tampa in 1916. He also knew James Weldon Johnson, the man who wrote that song we sang to open up this program this evening. And so many other people, he knew them firsthand. So we have so much to hold our heads up high about. Let us continue to do that. Let us pour as much of this love and strength that we can wrap our arms around into our children. They are the future. Thank you.
story that was actually inspired by that same presidential visit. I'm wondering if you can start there and tell us a little bit about your story of inspiration.
Thank you, Tammy. I tell you, my heart is just overwhelmed. I'm trying to, wow. Because I've been telling everybody, the ones that are sitting here, many of you are there. We're the last generation went through segregation. And if we don't tell our story, it does not get told. And I have to give credit to Jody with Tampa Times when she interviewed me. I talked about my pastor, because I gave her the same story. I talked about the Reverend Dr. A. Leon Laurie. She said she did not know him, but she went back and did a research. And he's in that magazine there. So that's the reason it's important to tell our story. And as Fred said, we did this a month ago over in St. Pete, well received. And I said, Fred, why are we not doing this in Hillsborough County? Why are we not in Tampa? So today, I want to say thank you for each one of you for coming out. You blessed my soul tonight. So thank you for that. Now my story, I'm Chloe Cundy, y'all know the woman that wears many hats. I was raised here in West Tampa, and I want to say in our Black community in the 50s and 60s, we had three major institutions. Number one was our family. Many of us had to live in West Tampa, East Tampa, Progress Village, and then Lincoln Garden or Carver City. We could not live anywhere else. So we knew our neighbors. We had a sense of community. And I'm thankful that my mother, Mary Mitchell, she was involved in the community. She always supported me. In fact, my stepfather, Ulysses Hayes, was one of the first blacks to start driving the bus for the heart. Now, being raised here in West Tampa, the second institution, of course, was our church. And we're here. And this is my church. I was raised, came here when I was 4 years old. And, of course, having the Reverend Dr. A. Leon Laurie being our pastor. On Sundays, I think many of you know his history. He was the state president of NACP. He really taught Dr. Martin Luther King. He also became a school board member. But as a child here, sitting in the congregation there, many times he would talk about civil rights. He talked about helping to integrate the lunchroom counter. He talked about what is your responsibility to civil rights. And then I would hear him talk about faith without works. I'm not going to preach y'all. Faith without works. And I tell you, that 13-year-old girl that integrated the school system heard that service, okay? That sermon. Now, the third institution was our schools. I'm glad that I went to Dunbar when I was separated. I went to Just, and I have two classmates here. Y'all raise your hand. Went to school with me at Just. We're the first class there that was brand new. And we had our principal there, Mr. Harold Clark. And he came through and he wanted to know who we can get to integrate the school system. I didn't know this, but to my husband. I've been married to my husband. September will be 55 years. Y'all know my husband. He's a proud yellow jack. 1965. Played running back in the champs, okay? But again, we know our schools in our community. And I want to say that as in 8th grade, you're right, Tammy, when President John Kennedy came to Tampa, they allowed us to get out of school. We went to Grand Central Boulevard there, now it's Kennedy, and we got a chance to see the our president, John Kennedy. And he made an impression upon me when he said one time, ask not what your country can do for you, but what can you do for your country? And this 13-year-old girl believed him. So when Harold Clark came to the school and said, who wants to go? It was 3 of us from Just. It was Patricia Killings, Henry White, and myself. We left and went to West Tampa Junior High School. But I must give credit to the teachers we had. We might have had the poor books, or the bad books, or the secondhand books, but we had awesome, great teachers that poured into us the wealth of knowledge and the love. And Fred is right. They told us we can be anything So to the legacy that I had of Miss Randolph Kinsey, to my teacher, Miss Margaret Mays, to my teacher, Miss Eloise Cabrera, and to my special, she became Congresswoman, Sylvia Kimball. They told me, Chloe, you making A's and B's in this black school. When we send you to the white school, we know you will make A's and B's. And that's the kind of legacy they left in all of us. So of course, when I went to West Tampa, I was in the Honor Society. I left there and went to the Jefferson, the old Jefferson. In 66, I was made into the National Honor Society and the Student Body Secretary. Had a wonderful time. Then my senior year happened. Rude awakening. They closed Old Jefferson and sent us to Hillsborough High School. Now, you know, Hillsborough High School is the oldest school here in Hillsborough County. White privilege at its best in 67 when I went there. I was told that because I made the Honor Society at Jefferson and other clubs, I was not valid. Did not be in there, even though I deserved to be there. I was told that when I raised my hand in class, after time put in the back of the class, called the N-word, then when we went to pep rally, culture shock. They had the Confederate flag running around the auditorium and singing Dixie. I wish we were in the land of cotton. Many days I literally cried and said, Lord, what did I get myself into? But when I graduated from Hillsborough, my mother said, I walked up to the stage, snatched my little plume, and said, I am never coming back to this racist, prejudiced school. That was in 1968. I had a scholarship to USF, Florida State, but I chose to go to Florida A&M. Any graduates in the house? All right. Wonderful time, especially with Delta, everything. I enjoyed it. Alliance Sister Eureka, okay? Enjoy it. Best decision. And then I want to come back and say that God knows how to turn it around. I'm going to stand up on that one. Y'all going to get a preacher here. Let's go back when I graduated from Hillsborough High School, he told me I was not worthy to be in their National Honor Society. I was not worthy to be in their social clubs, and called me the N-word and put me in the back of the class. Come on. But I've come today to tell y'all that God is faithful. Hallelujah. He knows how to turn it around. And in 2021, Hillsborough High School inducted this black woman into the Hall of Fame. Only God can do this at FAMU. Department of Correction came to FAMU and was looking for blacks to go into that field. So once again, I raised my hand because they said to pay all your student loans. I said, sure. So I graduated in 1971. In June of 1972, Department of Correction hired me as their first female probation officer. This is June of 1972. And when I went to do a precinct investigation with my supervisor, I in Ruskin went up there and the guy came out from the store with a gun, pointed to me and thought he was my boyfriend. I made up my mind and tears just coming through my eyes and said, Lord, when I get myself back again, I was able to go to the courtroom and I had two mentors. And I thank God for mentors, and please make sure you tell their story, okay? My first mentor, and he was a state attorney during this time, was George Edgecombe. He later became Judge Edgecombe. That's my Sir Rodriguez's husband. And he told me, Chloe, I'm going to take you out of the field because I know it's dangerous. I'm going to make you my court service supervisor. So I have the honor of serving him in court, okay? And then the next person I had, and he was a lawyer there, and everybody knew him, was Delano Stewart. He's always been my mentor. So Delano, thank you so much for being there. Because this little girl was scared again. And he told me along with Judge Edgecombe, somebody has to do it. Somebody has to stand up and demand a change. So there's still changes to be made. So I hope today we say yes, and we see more of our young people. That's who I challenge all the time. That's who I love speaking to them. To stand up and make that change. So God bless y'all, and y'all bless my soul today for coming. Amen.
How about that Miss Chloe doesn't just invite you to church, but she takes you to church, right? Thank you so much for your testimonial. We're going to learn more in just a bit. I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner Gwen Myers. And Commissioner Gwen Myers.
I said, let the church say amen. Chloe.
We have to tell a story. Where's her sister? That's my classmate. Stand up, classmate. Okay, 68. Well, she was in West Ham. And she wanted to follow us. Am I right, Rosalind? Yes. Everywhere we went. So we would take her, and we made sure we introduced her. But I want to say, it's a pleasure to have somebody from West Tampa that you know them win. Come on. You know them win. And to see where they are. And see how she gives back to this community. Let's give Commissioner Gwen Myers a round of applause.
They were talking about Fred and Chloe and Dr. Walker about a change. It's going to come. We know we had a song, a change is coming. Well, in 1970, I was at Blake. 1971, I had to go to plant. Now, you're talking about a change. You're talking about a change. It was very, very difficult going to plant my junior year. Because all I knew was to be a yellow jacket. A yellow jacket from West Tampa. Strong yellow jackets. And even today, when our class we gather, we talk about the same subject. How we were split of the various schools. From Robinson, Lato, Hillsborough, Chamberlain, Plant. But we found the common goal to always come back to all class of 72. To keep that bond that we thought we were going to have in our own black schools. But we didn't. You're talking about a change, going to Plant. And then when I was at Blake, I was in the band. Going to Plant, they had to we're gonna see if you can be in the band. Now I can play the clarinet, and I knew I could march, okay? Because I can't think of band instructor, but he was from FAMU. So if you had an instructor from FAMU, you knew how to march. You didn't get nothing else, and how to turn and all. But nevertheless, that was a setback. And just going to classes, we were not accepted, but we had to go. And in my mother's house, you had to get an education. Whether it was Plant, Robinson, whatever. Okay, you had to get your education. You can come home and you can cry every day, coming home, Mama, why? Mama, why? We have to experience this. when everyone else could graduate from Blake or Middleton? Why me when I'm thinking that yellow jacket? And it's ironic. Blake, black and gold. Plant, black and gold. Okay, we had the colors, but it was not the same. Okay? Had school colors, but we're not the same. So my whole point, what I'm saying today, and I say this often, we would think where we are in America, in Hillsborough County, desegregation is still the comments that we hear. It's still among us. I wonder, is racism going to ever change? I'm just being honest. You know, I get the calls as a commissioner if I don't vote the right way, the hate calls. But see, you look at when this has started years ago, and today, we in 2024. And you have to ask yourself, look over your life. What could I do better to try to help the young people to understand you still have to get an education? They're going to take everything from us, but you have to stay the course. It's not easy. Ask me, when I graduated from Plant, I couldn't wait to get the FAMU out that summer. Okay, I enrolled in the summer because I wanted that culture that I was missing from Blake. You know, when you're used to that culture and being around, oh, it was a joy to get up on the hill. Now, trust me, we're talking about education, but you have to know the purpose. And it's the same for the students today in high school. And I would say this, I mentioned it to my husband when I was coming here, and he says, you know, I was a part of that Manning suit that was filed in 1958. His daughter, the late Gail Myers Hodges, he was in that suit with the Cannons and the Mannings, but the Mannings led the way. And you still look at today, what are we facing? You think it's better? Talk to me, just a few. You think it's better? You think we're getting better? Is it getting worse? Okay, we can say it's kind of medium, okay? But we should, by now, be further advanced.
That's true.
Further advanced as a race of people. Further advanced on all the lawsuits that have been filed over the years. And we're still struggling today, even to get into the university. Oh, I know y'all see it on TV. We're talking about education. So when they finish taking everything from us, what is going to be left? And if we don't continue to fight for what we want and let our voices be heard, even me as a commissioner is only one, but I have to fight hard. And I'm not afraid to go across the aisle. But if you believe in what you believe in, it's okay to stand alone. It's okay. You know, you can, your board meeting is over, you can say, Lord, I did what I was supposed to do, I'm okay. I'm okay. And so I'm going to end it up and say thanks so much for taking time to come, because this truly was a teachable moment and an educational experience from hearing from the panel as well, for me as well. Thank you all so much.
Commissioner Myers, in the spirit of change, you're working on an initiative right now here in Hillsborough County. I'd like for you to talk about that for a moment.
That would be my African American Art and Culture Center.
That would be it.
Thank you so much. It's coming soon. A 50,000 square foot African American Art and Culture Center that is going to be located at 2103 North Rome Avenue in West Tampa. There's something about West Tampa that I really, really like. But that was some property that the Board of County Commissioners already owned, was easy to select. So today we raised $15.5 million to build this facility. And we've held 6 community engagement meetings. And it's been so overwhelming of the support from the community. You're talking about the art, just the art. Had one person came to the meeting 2 weeks ago and was talking about journalism and how you can tie journalism into a media component with music. But the Culture Center is going to have amphitheater, sculpture gardens, we'll have where we can plug the food trucks with charge in and all. It's gonna be very unique and different. It's gonna offer a lot because we're in partnership with Visit Tampa Bay. It's gonna be run by Hillsborough County, shared with our Hillsborough County Park and Recreation Center, but led by the Tampa Bay African American Art and Culture Center, Inc. That was a nonprofit that is gonna lead the way. And we're raising money, so I want to invite you all now, get your phones out because that's how we mostly keep our calendars today. Juneteenth, which is June 19th, at 10 a.m. at 2103 North Rome Avenue. We're gonna have our capital campaign kickoff. Now the capital campaign kickoff is to raise money, okay? We're 10 million short, we have to have 25 million, the county keep telling me before I can break ground. So I'm gonna honor the county wishes and get them to put some more money in the budget so I can get that other 10 million that I need so we can break ground. But we want the community involved to come and be involved. This is for the community, designed with the input by the community. And so I can make one more announcement, please. Thank you. On June 23rd, we're gonna have unity in the community. Keep your calendars out, keep your phones out, at Al Barnes Park. I think that's 2902 North 32nd Street from 1 to 5. That is something that we're working with our youth. The 509 committee came out of the closing of JUST to say, how can we deal with community issues? So I invite you to receive my newsletter, you see that information in there. So I invite you to those 2 events to come out and be a part. It takes our community to keep things together. I know we can disagree, as I told Fred Herms, when they voted to close JUST. That was the first time in my life I saw the community. When we came together, everybody that didn't like each other, they liked each other and spoke at the school board to save JUST. And that's what we have to continue to do. Put the difference aside. We have a lot of community issues that we need to address. Thank you so much.
Dr. Ray Arsenault, Professor Emeritus, University of South Florida, and the author of the most recent and my favorite of the books that talk about Congressman John Lewis. Dr. Arsenault, you finished your book this year. You talked at length with John Lewis over the years when you still could. And he talked a lot about the lawyers and how the civil rights movement needed the lawyers to be able to push forward the legal aspects that were accomplished in Brown versus Board of Education and the further dismantling of Jim Crow laws. Tell us a little bit about how the Brown decision served as a foundation for John Lewis and for other activists in the civil rights movement.
Well, let me begin by saying I really feel honored being here with you today in the Leon Lowry Center. I've long been a great admirer of his. I moved back to Florida in 1980, and I had the great good fortune to spend an afternoon with Reverend Lowry. And I'd heard about him, but you had to experience him to really know what an extraordinary man and leader he was. So I always thought that we never had anyone quite like that in St. Petersburg, where I live. We had some civil rights leaders, but I think Reverend Lowry was special, so it's really wonderful to be here. As Tammy said, I've spent the last few years researching and writing about John Lewis. John was a close friend of mine. We had a 20-year friendship. Spent a lot of time with him, trying to learn from him. When I finally published the first biography of him in January, I decided to use the subtitle, In Search of the Beloved Community. That really was what his life was all about. Searching for the beloved community was, of course, a phrase that he sort of borrowed from Dr. King, but others have used it before. But John made it his own. And I have a sense that this gathering tonight, this room, is about as close as you're going to find the beloved community in the United States. So you should really be proud that we've come together here to talk about a very important topic. You know, historians have long regarded the Brown decision as one of the most important events in American history. Everyone seems to agree on that. Not everyone agrees, obviously, on interpreting the strengths and weaknesses of the decision. And I want to just take a couple minutes to give you the sense of how most historians see the Brown decision, because it's a complicated thing. As many of you know, there were actually two Brown decisions. There's the Brown decision of May 17th, 1954, where the Supreme Court unanimously struck down Plessy versus Ferguson, the separate but equal doctrine. But not so many people know about the second Brown decision, May 31st, 1955. That's the so-called implementation decision. You probably heard the phrase, with all deliberate speed, whatever that means, right? Well, that's what the court came up with in May of 1955. In a sense, I think they lost their nerve a bit. They were shaken by the massive resistance which had emerged in the previous year. People were telling them there might be a civil war. They got scared, and so they decided to let things sort of develop. Well, I think maybe they thought it would be naturally. I don't think they thought it would be another 17 years before the Brown decision would have any real major effect. So the way historians look at this is that the Brown decision is important both for its successes and its failures. It demonstrates the power of the law. I mean, just the fact that the federal court system that's speaking through the Supreme Court finally said that African Americans could be and should be full citizens. That had never really been said before. You know? A kind of complete reversal of the Dred Scott decision of 1857, which said that black people could never be citizens of the United States. So in symbolic terms, it's incredibly important for people's self-respect, their hope for the future. And I think there was a real expectation that even though people knew there'd be reaction against the Brown decision, that the schools would be effectively desegregated within 3 or 4 or 5 years. Certainly Thurgood Marshall believed that. And he came to be bitterly disappointed by the kind of response of white America. And I think particularly in black America, there was a lot of disappointment. A lot of people telling people, oh, we told you so. You can't legislate morality. You can't really change things with a court decision. But the long-term effect on the civil rights movement, or what we now call the African American freedom struggle, was that the Brown decision created a kind of platform for people to hope, to think that they might have a chance to win in the courts. But the reality was, it also showed, maybe even more emphatically, that you can't depend on the law to give you freedom. You've got to get it yourself. Nobody's going to give it to you. And of course, what happens is when the disappointment settles in the late 50s and the early 60s. That makes the way for the transition to nonviolent direct action, taking the struggle out of the courts and into the streets. And that's when the movement becomes a kind of movement culture, where people get involved in something larger than themselves. The genius of Dr. King, of John Lewis and the others who put their bodies on the line, who were willing to die for a cause. I don't think too many people were willing to die for a court decision, but they were willing to die for the chance for a moral reformation of American life, of changing the hearts and minds of people. And that's really what the movement of the 1960s and after has been all about. And I'm not sure it would have happened when it did or how it did without the failure of the Brown decision. So there's a great irony there. Brown pushed things forward, but by failing, it sort of reoriented people's belief in the power of citizenship. You know, the power of ordinary people to do extraordinary things. I don't think they felt that way after the Brown decision, but by the mid-60s, with all the extraordinary things and sacrifices, the kind of unmerited suffering that so many civil rights activists went through, that we've become a different nation. Obviously, not as much as we would have liked, right? It's a bittersweet story. We haven't reached the beloved community, maybe except in rooms like this, right? So, trying to figure out what the Brown decision did and what it did not do, and how it affected the freedom struggle, is one of the most important things that we can do, that historians can do, certainly. And I can tell you there are literally hundreds of professional historians who have devoted their entire careers studying this process. It's one of the most vital subfields in all of historical study. Historians of civil rights have won more Pulitzer Prizes than any other subfield because it hits people where they live. I mean, the stories that we have to tell, the narratives about these incredibly heroic people like John Lewis. Now, John Lewis was exceptional, maybe unique. I've been going around the country talking about him since the book came out in January, and I can't tell you how much adoration and respect I have felt from the people who come up to me after I speak, not because of my speech, but because they connect to John Lewis, that this search for the beloved community is something that I think many of us aspire to do. And so it's sometimes difficult, as I don't have to tell you, to keep your hope up with the state of American politics and the assault on American democracy. But John Lewis never gave up. You know, he never wavered for a moment. Even after he got pancreatic cancer in late 2019, that didn't stop him for a second. I always remembered when, just before he went, the day before he went into the hospital finally, before he died, he summoned up what energy he had left to go out to the Black Lives Matter Plaza, north of the White House. And I have a photograph in my book of him. You know, he's got his mask on because it's COVID and all that. But here's this 80-year-old man reaching down whatever strength he had left to make this sort of statement that all those people who went into the streets to support the Black Lives Matter movement, it was a potential revolution. It was something as he said, he'd been waiting for all his life. So I think even though those years were tough for him and for many of us, it left us with a legacy and a hope. And so I think that's what gives us all strength to carry on this struggle. As John always said, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And freedom is a struggle. And of course, sadly, he lived long enough to see the Voting Rights Act, which he risked his life for, which he fought for more than anyone else, totally dismantled by the Supreme Court. Now, of course, the Voting Rights Act is now bill is named for him, and maybe we'll all live long enough to see it reenacted and a real return to American democracy. started this movement and carried it forward in places like Tampa, communities all over the country, particularly in the Deep South and other parts of the South, that regenerated American democracy. I shudder to think what American democracy would have been like without the Civil Rights Movement, because it really returned us to those ideals we'd never lived up to, but preserved them and gave us hope for the future. Thank you.
Throughout this evening, young people have been coming up, right? Thinking about John Lewis being a college student when he first began his activism. Commissioner Myers, your talk about moving in your senior year. Ms. Chloe, your experiences in school, moving to Jefferson and then over to Plant. Mr. Hearns, you were talking about being at Middleton High School. I'm thinking about young people because I'm also thinking about in this 70th anniversary of the Brown versus Board of Education decision. We have an article that came out just a few weeks ago that indicates that our schools are as segregated now as they were in 1967. So I know that we are running short on time this evening, but I'd really like to pose the question to all of our panelists. What do you have to say to young people about the Brown decision and the promise of the Brown decision as they're navigating their school systems at this time today?
Thank you, Tammy, and I will just make a quick announcement, and I'm so happy that Commissioner Myers talked about this wonderful edifice that we're going to have very soon in West Tampa. African American culture and art is so important, and let me honor the name that some of us may have forgotten and some maybe never heard, Dr. Ike Tribble. Dr. Ike Tribble, who taught us to dream big. He was really a man way before his time, but he was the first man I ever heard to quote an African proverb. And he did it in city council one day. I said, oh my goodness. I never heard anybody else do that. Anyway, real quickly, Tampa Bay History Center, on the same day that you all are going to be out celebrating Juneteenth in West Tampa at the facility that Commissioner Myers spoke about. So save some of your energy, because later on that evening, at 5:30, you're invited over to, how many of you all remember the dances in Central Park Village? Okay, I got some soldiers out here. You remember that red brick church right in front of the auditorium where the dances were held? That's the St. James Episcopal Church building that very soon is going to be Tampa's Black History Museum. Amen. So Ashley Morrow is in the back, and Ashley, I believe you have flyers that will give you more information about what we're going to be doing Juneteenth at 5:30. The Fabric of Freedom is going to be a beautiful fashion show, and so we're going to have food and refreshments, and Ashley has the flyers. So what can we say to young people? I think that was the question. And we have to continue to give them hope. You know, when you look at the statistics, and my God, our children seem to always be near the bottom when it comes to almost every category you can imagine. But there's a reason for that. And I'm not a professional educator, but I do know that we have got to drill our history into our children, and we've got to do it at home. Because it ain't going to happen in school, I don't believe. Now, there may be some exceptions, but when we realize, I mentioned earlier, from whence we have come and what we've been able to accomplish, in spite of the odds against us, in spite of racism and bigotry and segregation and discrimination and all of those things that we have experienced And our children are still experiencing some of that in school. They have to have some successes that will make them, first of all, want to be there. My God, those of us who went to school in the 60s, we couldn't wait to get to school every day because you might miss something if you're not there. You didn't want to miss a day of school. Oh my God, how things have changed. So we got to give them that love of self, and then that can spread to realizing that, as someone said, you've got to get that education. I think that was Commissioner Myers. That's what our parents drilled into us. I don't know how much of that is being drilled into our children today, but for those who will listen, I guarantee the more we know about our history, the higher we can lift our heads and the more we can achieve, because we realize that one with God is a majority. One with, just one. Just one with God is a majority. So I think that's what we need to do, and we can do it in a number of different ways. I know Beulah Baptist Institutional Church, Pastor, I know you initiated Black History classes, and I visited your library when it opened, and we can all do something. We can all do something.
Okay. I would just like to speak to our youth to say that you all are our future leaders. And I see some of us on Facebook, so if our youth are listening, you know, just like we are here today, we have members of the Divine Nine, we have civic organizations. Bring your youth with us when we have these type of events. You can clap, because that's what's missing. We are coming, but they are not. And this is how we can get them involved. We take them, and I remember several organizations, and I would start asking, bring the young people so they can hear, participate. They're our future leaders. How are you going to lead if you don't know what to do? If we don't help train you. So we're training you through various organizations, and we want you to come and be a part. And if you don't do anything else, election 2024, young people, go vote. Thank you.
I'm going to be real quick because I know that we need to leave. And first of all, I want to thank Reverend Harris. We want to thank you for opening the doors. Let's give him a round of applause. And as we're talking about legacy, and that's what I want to keep saying, bring up those who's gone before us that we're standing on their shoulders. But then I always make sure that I tell people, who are you passing the baton to? Y'all know it's a family CDC at Tampa, and they celebrating 32 years. Well, I'm so happy that my son Ernest, who graduated from Dartmouth Ivy League School, went to USF, and he decided to follow his mother's legacy. And now he's the president and CEO of CDC at Tampa. You heard, let's give a round of applause for him. You heard Dr. George Sharon Smith talk about being the founder of the Black Institute. We know now that we've had the mantle being picked up by Dr. Freeman. And then she has a young man. Where's David? I don't know his last name. David, please stand. I want to make sure. Stand up, David. That's right. He's now, let's give him a round of applause. He was now going to be the director of the Institute of Black Life. Let's wrap our arms around him. Make sure that he's very successful. Whatever he needs, make sure we do that. And again, I'm going to challenge all of us. Let's open opportunities for our next generation. Put them in charge and support them. That's all I got to say.
So to answer the question, what do I tell youth about the Brown case? Is I encourage youth to study it, learn more about it. I reiterate and underscore what Fred said in terms of ensuring that you know who you are, you know your history. That certainly furthers self-esteem. But as an educator, I also talk to you about the implications from Brown for me is to prepare the best teachers that I can for African American children. And I want them to know that teaching still is the most noble profession. So if you know of anyone that wants to be a teacher in urban schools, I have just the program for you. Call me Mr. At the University of South Florida, and guess what? Call Me Mr. program is a national program. We have the only one in the state of Florida, but it's also open to women as well. So I want to say that, and then let me give a shout out also to Dr. Elizabeth Horch Freeman. So we got this license for Call Me Mr., this covenant license at University of South Florida. I couldn't get any support anywhere at the University of South Florida for Call Me Mr. And Dr. Elizabeth Horch Freeman provided support for Call Me Mr. So thank you so very much.
Yes, I think this is probably the most important question of the night, what we tell young people. Let me just tell you a story. I have one grandson, Lincoln, born in Atlanta. He's 8 years old, and in 2015. And 2015 was also the year of the 50th anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery March, where, of course, Bloody Sunday, as it's sometimes called, where John Lewis led 600 marchers across the Independence Bridge and was nearly killed for the effort. I tell myself now that I was too young to be there when I was a high school senior, and so I missed that chance to see some history made, but I was determined to be there for the 50th anniversary. So I was there with Bernard Lafayette Jr. Some of you may know Bernard. He's perhaps the best known civil rights leader to ever come out of Tampa. He's an international figure, runs nonviolent workshops even today at the age of 84. He was John Lewis's best friend and his roommate in college, and was instrumental to my research on the book, and he's become a dear friend. So I went with him to that 50th anniversary, and we met with about 25 young leaders from Ferguson, Missouri, Black Lives Matter leaders. And the idea was that Bernard and I would tell them about the lessons of the freedom rides. Somehow we would help them. And maybe we did some of that. But what I remember is what Bernard and I learned from those kids. They're incredibly impressive and committed to social change and to standing up for what they believed in. I can remember Bernard telling them, you have to remember that there's a difference between a protest and a movement. Okay? You've got to somehow turn protest into a movement. You have to have discipline. You have to be in there for the long haul. It can't just be something that happens in the streets and then you go back to your normal life. You have to be committed in a real sense, and I've never forgotten that. What he told those kids that night. And then finally, I tend to see the world through my grandchildren, thinking what kind of world are they going to live in? What kind of world are they going to inherit? And one of the happiest moments of my life was when Lincoln was 2 days old in Atlanta. He's home. Bernard Lafayette came over and he put Lincoln on his knee and he started singing a freedom song which he had made up in 1961 during the Freedom Rides called Buses Are A-Comin'. And I tried later to tell Lincoln that he had this great entry into the world. Who else has Bernard Lafayette singing freedom songs to him when he's 2 days old? But somehow that moment gave me maybe hope for the future, that there will be more freedom songs to come.
Thank you so much. So we are going to conclude our panel, and we're going to have some closing remarks in just a moment. Please join me in thanking all of our panelists. Mr. Sandy Gray in the audience
officiated her promotion ceremony was a black female who was a major general, who 2 years ago was promoted to general officer. I have hope, and I disagree with you, Commissioner Meyer, because I don't think that we're so-so. I think we're going the wrong way, and I think we're on the wrong trajectory. We have the wrong inertia. However, I do have faith. And one of the reasons why I have faith is this year the Marine Corps every year promotes 11 black generals. 11 generals in the Marine Corps. 11. This year, this is why I have hope. 3 of them were black. The black female that I told you about, and 2 black males. That's why I have hope.
Okay, so we are just going to have our closing remarks by the imam, and as he's making his way to the stage, I do want to say that I'm so grateful that everyone's here this evening. The question around young people, Community Tampa Bay, one of our programs is Anytown. Anytown's been in the Tampa Bay area 30 years. Any Anytowners in the room? Yeah! Amazing. Anytown is a life-changing program for youth. We build an inclusive community in 1 week that changes lives, changes the way that people interact with each other for the rest of their lives. We have 2 sessions coming up this summer. One is next week, and the other one's in July. We have a few spots for high school students still in the July session. We actually filled, as of today, our first session, we'll have 60 youth committed to building inclusive communities, having conversations very similar to this evening's conversation, starting on Monday. So thank you so much for knowing about that program, for supporting that program, because it is part of the answer of the challenges that we talked about this evening. And the final thing I'll say is that I did not talk about a card that was at your table. It was in the interest of getting to a Q&A, which we never did. I predicted we weren't going to get to that. But I want you to use those cards. And on those cards, I'd like you to think of 3 young people that you want to tell a story that either you heard this evening or of someone that you've heard about that's in this room this evening and you want to do some research with them. 3 young people that you can take these messages of this evening and convey into another generation. Please do that on those cards. Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be your moderator this evening.
Let's give her a round of applause for the great job that she did. You have been so patient and so gracious. I'm sure you feel the power and the energy in the room. I've been taking notes as I listen to our esteemed panelists. I have about 18 pages. I'm not going to go through everyone line by line. Before I do that, Dr. Jules Smith, please come. She has a presentation she'd like us to make. Very quick before he escapes. He thinks he's going to get out of here. If you're going to be an activist and be involved in the movement, well, first, if you're going to be a criminal and run the risk of getting arrested, make sure you have a good lawyer and a good bail bondsman. I had the best lawyer. We did a lot of things here. And I had the best lawyer who became a midwife for lawyers and a judge maker. And we could go back, there are lots of lawyers and judges who owe their careers and successes to this gentleman. And there are others, again, I mean no disrespect to anybody, but Attorney Bell and Stewart. Were it not for them, were it not for Dale and bail bondsman Ira Blossom, I'd be standing here with a striped suit on. You know what I'm talking about. So I love it. I love it. I have it.
As I was sitting here, there's nobody in participation that I have aided at some point in their life. And the reality of it is never over. The fight is all day long forever. And if you don't think that way, you're not going to win it. My friend who went along too late, I did not believe that I could be beat when you do God's work. You will never defeat it. If you can understand that, the first time we got him acquitted, the sheriff blocked our way. And I said, move, or I'm going to heaven or hell, but I'm coming out of this door here. And that was the door we went out. The fight is not a fight that you can give up on, and it's forever. And you have to understand the reality of a fight for freedom. You're never going to be free until you understand you're God's creature, and you can do anything that He wants you to do.
Thank you for that. Just a couple of very quick closing comments. First of all, I bring you greetings on behalf of the members of the board of directors of an organization that I helped to found and currently serve as president and CEO of an organization. It's called Collective Empowerment Group of the Tampa Bay Area. Collective Empowerment Group of the Tampa Bay Area. I won't take the time, but that name was purposefully constructed the way it was. We have to work together. We have to break down the barriers and the silos. We have to connect the dots. We have to. Individuals blessed by God can do great things. And no one knows what your potential is. Don't let anybody tell you what you can and cannot do. Only you and God know that. But we're not talking about us as individuals. Dr. King said, April 3rd, 1968, in Memphis, the night before he was shot. And I encourage you can hear that entire speech. Go back and listen to the full speech. What people remember was, I've been to the mountaintop, I've seen the promised land. I may not make it there with you, but we as the people will make it to the promised land. That was the end of the speech that he gave. You should listen to the entire speech and listen to what he talks about. And remember why he was in Memphis and the people that he was there to help and to serve and to lead and to inspire and to encourage. Listen to the entire speech. One of the things that he talked about, he said, as a people, were we to aggregate our wealth and our political power, we would be the 6th or the 7th or most powerful nation on the face of the earth. Think about that. This was in 1968. When we learned to work together, to bind ourselves, you know, you got one finger and one stick, and you can bend it or break it, but when you bind it together, that's the message that he was trying to deliver. Now, fast forward. The enemies of people, the people who do not want to see us, or a lot of other people, not just us, become free and enjoy liberty and justice for all, etc., they don't stop. They don't quit. They understand that the fight is a constant fight. That's why they go around and dig up dirt. And they go up and dig up dirt on you, and they just sit on the dirt. They might sit on that dirt for years until they need it. And that's happening. Isn't that what's happening now? That's what we're witnessing, seeing right now. We have to understand the time that we're in and the things that are happening. Somebody talked about how the Civil Rights Act was being turned back. They talked about, someone mentioned how they're outlawing DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Things that you cannot teach in school in terms of our history. Or if you're going to teach it, you have to teach it the way they want you to teach it, and make sure you don't hurt anybody's feelings and make anybody feel bad. You don't do that. Truth makes you free. Tell the truth. You're better off telling the truth even on yourself, even if it makes you feel bad. It makes you face reality of what you need to do to bring about change. These are some kinds of things. So just a couple of quick points, and then we're going to close this out again. We've been very patient, and I know we've held some people against their will. Now, just very quickly. Remember. Please bear with us just a second, please. I have a responsibility. Then I'm going to turn it back over because I will finish what I was called to do. There are people who watch from on high and who plot and plan. And they study, including studying scripture. So they know, for example, that God says these people are going to wander in the wilderness in the desert for 40 years, but then a Messiah will lead them out of that desert, out of the wilderness. Why? Because they'll have a vision, they'll have unity, they have clarity of purpose, they have sense of goal, direction, etc., etc., etc. We can't let that happen. So Malcolm X, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz was assassinated at 39 years old. Listen to me for a second. He and Dr. King had met and were talking with each other and were listening to each other and saying, we are two sides of the same coin. What if we really started to work together? Yes, we have differences in things. What if we really started to work together? What if your movement and my movement came together? What a powerful, transformative experience that would have on this country. Martin Luther King was killed at 39 years old. Right? Don't let them come together. Don't let them get together. Don't let them get organized. Don't let them connect the dots. Right? Keep focusing on the difference, keeping them separated, individuals and small groups and this, that, and the other. Because individuals and small groups will never change history in the larger sense. Look at the real transformative movements in history. I studied history. History of a lot of different countries, etc. So you need large groups of people. If America's going to change, and I'm going to close with this comment. On April 9, 1968, on the campus of the University of South Florida, I spoke on a program with the late Reverend Dr. Adion Lago at the speech that I gave, April 9, 1968, memorial to Dr. King. And we said, we're going to change America because we will not accept America as it is. And we set out as a group of people. And there are changes that are in place that have been doing as a result of it. I'm saying to you, those of you here, and our leader, Collective Empowerment Group of the Tampa Bay area is a Marine, Pastor Lewis Murphy. So he understands leadership and sacrifice. We can work together and change things, but you have to have hope, yes. You have to have faith, yes. You have to have vision, because without vision, people perish. And you have to have a plan that people understand and agree on. Otherwise, you're not working on the same thing in the direction of the same causes. We need plans, just like even some of the projects that you talk about. You have to have plans, concrete plans to accomplish those things. So I'm going to sit down. I'm going to turn it back over, let you close it out. Pastor, you close it out. I think someone wanted to make a comment, but you welcomed us up. So I'm going to ask whoever wants to do it, then I'm going to say, thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you for coming.
I agree with the Imam that we are not holding anyone, and we respect that we have run over time. However, this is also a cherished moment that we have so many incredible living legacies in our room, and Mr. Warren Dawson would like to say something, so I'd like to create that space for him.
Thank you very much. We had history to occur about 3 days ago in this country. We had a past president who had done everything in the world, and finally made him responsible, found him guilty of 34 counts, felonies, making him to, for the first time in all of this time, to finally account. And we will celebrate that situation for years to come. Family got him guilty, as he well deserved. Well, we came here today to celebrate the Brown decision. Brown versus the school board of Topeka, Kansas. And as Brenda said, and its related cases. Brown versus the school board did a lot to desegregate America. And as I said, we're here today to celebrate it. It really is a book. It had 3 or 4 related cases, and its progeny was many cases. A chapter in that book that was Brown versus the Board of Education was the case of Manning versus the School Board of Hillsborough County. We're here to celebrate Brown, but we really should also recognize our contribution to and our involvement with Manning versus the School Board of Hillsborough County, Florida. I might add, Hillsborough County, Florida was one of the larger school districts desegregated by Brown, in that the school system in Hillsborough County, Florida was at least one time the 9th largest school district in America. And so now we have, as I said earlier, history of this week. Alvin Bragg. Anybody know who that was? Who was Alvin Bragg? That's right. It was his case that brought about that victory against the past president. The case of Manning versus the school board, which desegregated the public schools in Hillsborough County, Florida, was my case, as was the case of Alvin Bragg, in the case of Donald Trump versus the people of New York. Just wanted to point that out.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dawson. Mr. Warren Dawson and Mr. Delano Stewart, 2 incredible legal giants of our community. Thank you so much for being here this evening. There is the Hillsborough County Bar Association about a decade ago created a documentary called Before the Law Was Equal. I was a part of a small group of young lawyers that worked on that. Mr. Dawson and Mr. Stewart told their stories as part of that documentary, which talked about the desegregation of the legal community here in Hillsborough County. It is accessible, I believe, on YouTube, and it's called Before the Law Is Equal. You can learn about Mr. Stewart, you can learn about Mr. Dawson, and several other legal giants are depicted in there. So we had an incredible opportunity to create that film. Thank you, Mr. Dawson, for being a part of it. With that, I want to conclude our evening. I want to say thank you so much for being a part of this evening. Thank you for holding out with us as we ran a little long. There's probably a calling question in the back of your mind of what's next, and I'm excited to share actually that Ms. Chloe, Fred, myself, our folks at the Tampa Bay Times Newspapers and Education are having a meeting tomorrow to talk about what is next, because we realized not only by the length of this program tonight, but in the preparations of it, there's so many stories and a need for us to have conversations like this. So we are going to use this as a catalyst for talking about bringing more programs like this to the Tampa Bay area. So thank you so much for being here, and we hope that you all have a wonderful night.